National school safety expert Dr. Ken Trump joining us now for more on the mass shooting at a Minneapolis church. And obviously, there are no words tonight for the parents and the students and the community affected by this. I've heard sound from these kids. One said he is familiar with the school training, but not in the mass in the church. How does emergency planning in this type of school setting, this Catholic school, how does that differ from other schools?
Well, faith-based settings are very unique. I've done a good deal of work over my decades in this field in Catholic, Jewish, and other school settings. And you have hundreds of kids and adult staff coming into one location, oftentimes with parishioners, parents, the community attending the same mass. The structures, the church is actually attached to the school in many cases physically. So who gets in? Who's monitoring? Access control, who's not monitoring in the room, but actually outside in the hallways and around the building and not participating in the rituals. And have you ever trained your students for a lockdown or an evacuation from the church, not just only the school? And typically that's something that our well-intended educators have not thought through for the worst case scenario.
You mentioned access control. That is so critical, all of it. But the Minneapolis police chief said on the outside, at least one door was blocked. What are the options?
Yeah, that's really the challenge, even knowing how to lock the doors. I did a tabletop exercise in one school where we spent about 10 minutes where the staff was just talking after my initial question about how do you physically lock the door with a key, by pushing up certain slides. How do you physically lock the door was a question that went on for minutes. So you have to have these conversations as school staff, particularly when you have unique settings like a faith-based site that is different from a public school, independent school, or other type of typical school setting, because it's a very unique environment. But it's also one that people have a hard time getting their arms and heads around, that they would even have to have that conversation. So oftentimes it gets pushed to the back burner because people just don't want to have the conversation and to drill in that type of sacred type of a setting.
I mean, that's absolutely right. These families, these children, they woke up, you know, so happy this is their safe place, and tragedy strikes. And sadly, there are now fears of copycats. Many are just starting the school year, as you know. What is your message to school leaders and to parents to keep their campuses safe?
Well, one active shooter is certainly one too many, but we need to understand that these are low probability, high impact occurrences. Fortunately, the vast majority of schools will never have an active shooter. Make sure you're looking at day-to-day school safety issues with bullying, aggressive behavior, but most of all, look on the prevention side where you're providing social, emotional, mental health supports to kids, having basic security measures in place with access, training your staff, spending the time on the people. And we know that there's a focus on target hardening, the physical security hardware and technology. Really, the key rests with our people. The number one way we find out about weapons plots, people are going to cause harm, is when somebody comes forward and tells an adult that they trust. But most of all, provide those supports, social, emotional, mental health supports to get people off the pathway to violence in the first place.
What is your message to kids tonight? They've seen this all over the news. They're having conversations right now with their families. What is your message to them without scaring them?
Yeah. The most important thing is, while we say be aware and prepared but not scared, but most of all is have those conversations, age and developmentally appropriate conversations with the kids, so that they have an adults at home that they can come to and have those conversations at school. And for parents to have some open, transparent conversations with their schools, and in this case, their faith-based leaders in those type of settings as well. It's about communication, putting things in context, decreasing anxiety, ambiguity, and uncertainty. And you start by having some shared understanding, some conversations, and making sure that you're supporting kids and know that somebody's there for them when they have a concern.
So frightening to think about, but as you mentioned, these conversations are critical. National security safety expert Dr. Ken Trump, thank you for joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Thank you.